is essentially according to contract. You have to, the rules that are sort of handed down to us, but you have to contract with them before they become law. And that law is contract law. You know, you enter into contract, you're bound by it. So yeah, it's two different things. One's overlaid on top of the other.
Parliament has no say in common law and is bound by it. So they create Acts of Parliament, and in the US, Acts of Congress. Because government is a creation of man, and a creation of man can never be above man, they need your consent before they have the force of law.
The principle of by consent, if people don't realise, is that we obviously have police because we want them, and that we only have to do what they say if it's reasonable, if we consent to what they're asking to. That is the principle of it for me. Obviously, the larger issue is the assumption that everybody who's walking on this land has given consent to be policed by these people. And that's an assumption that most police officers in this country live by without realising that it's not true. You know, and this is where diplomatic immunity is a good example of where, well, actually the consent isn't given and the police don't have the power to act. Another good example that shows it's all about jurisdiction is that our police have no power at all at the American Embassy. But that's on our land, isn't it? And that's another example. Embassies are a good example that shows that jurisdiction is portable. It's not tied to land, it's tied to the party. So I can carry my jurisdiction with me, which is the whole principle of sovereignty in general.
My understanding of policing by consent is that, as I said earlier, when a law is passed, for it to be lawful, it has to have the consent of the people. People have to consent to that law and consent to abide by it. But unfortunately, I think we're in a system now where that obviously doesn't happen, but people don't realise that by verbally agreeing with, let's say, a police officer in relating to a parking ticket, that you're entering into a verbal contract, and by agreeing with what the officer is saying, you're consenting to being bound by the law, or whatever the law is. And people, when we say words like, do you understand, when a police officer says to you, reads the caution and says, do you understand, what they're actually saying is, do you stand under our authority? Now again, you know, I didn't know this as a police officer, and even the words that are spoken as a police officer, police don't even necessarily understand themselves. So I believe that people have to consent to a law for it to apply to them, in the legal sense, because it's not common law.
So when you interact with the police or the court system, they will ask you for your name, address, and date of birth. This is done to create joinder between you and your legal fiction, and to trick you into representing it. Once you agree to represent your legal fiction, now they can deal with you.
They can only apply their legal mechanisms if they have the name of the slave they're dealing with. If you state, well, I don't want to give my name, then they can't apply the mechanisms to you because they have no name for their paperwork. And remember, all their systems work via paperwork. It's all paperwork.